My name is Selena Hartwell. I'm 25 years old, and what I'm about to share with you is a real story, one that still haunts me in ways I can't explain. This is not just about ghosts or dark shadows, it's about the lies that raised me and the revenge I never saw coming. I grew up thinking my family was a little strict, maybe even overprotective. But what I found out shattered everything. There were no bedtime stories, just rules. No celebrations, just rituals, and one day I opened a locked room I wasn't supposed to enter, and that's when everything began to unravel. If you're watching this, please hit the subscribe button, like the video, and share it with someone who needs to know how dark family secrets can become. This story is written and edited by Dark Life Side Diaries. I never thought my life was unusual until I left home. Raised in a Victorian-style mansion tucked into the outskirts of Vermont, the Hartwell estate was both hauntingly beautiful and isolated. We had no neighbors, no visitors, no birthday parties or holidays. My mother Isadora had rules that went beyond strict. They were almost religious. Never open the red door, she'd whisper every night, touching my forehead with a strange oil. Never speak of your dreams, and never ever go out after dark. I obeyed because I was terrified not to. My father Edwin was cold and silent. He rarely spoke to me unless it was to recite one of the family codes. Obedience is survival, disobedience is death. These weren't rules, they were warnings, but I was too young to understand the full weight of them. The first real crack in my reality came when I turned 18. I asked about college, about friends, about why I'd never been allowed to go to school. I expected resistance. What I didn't expect was the panic in my mother's eyes. That night I overheard her whispering frantically to my father, "She's starting to question, we need to perform the rite early." That word, "rite," chilled me. I pretended to be asleep, but every nerve in my body buzzed with dread. The next morning my door was locked from the outside, my window nailed shut. For the first time in my life, I knew something was deeply wrong. Over the next few weeks I began to secretly document things: strange chanting at night, candles burning in the woods, a room in the basement where my name was carved into the stone floor. There were books in the attic filled with rituals written in Latin, diagrams of human anatomy, marked with red ink, and sketches of me, some realistic, some almost monstrous. One afternoon, while pretending to organize the library, I found an old photo album tucked behind the fireplace. The pictures were faded, but one of them stopped my breath. A baby girl with my face held in the arms of a woman who wasn't Isadora. That woman had my eyes, my smile. Behind her, a man who looked like my father, but not quite. It hit me all at once. I wasn't their biological child. I was taken. I didn't confront them right away. Instead, I waited for nightfall and broke into the forbidden red room. The stench of mold and metal hit me first. Inside was a crib, old and rusted, and walls covered with Polaroids of babies, some smiling, some crying, some scratched out, and there on the far end was a mirror covered in symbols with a single phrase etched beneath it: "Only the truth will set her free." I stared into the mirror, expecting my reflection. Instead, I saw flashes, quick, violent images: a woman screaming, blood on a nursery wall, a man with burned skin holding a baby, and then my own face screaming in the dark. I fell to the ground, shaking. From behind me, the floorboards creaked. I turned slowly and saw my father standing there holding a blade. "You weren't supposed to see that," he whispered. That night I ran, but the truth followed me. Couldn't sleep the night after I returned from the attic. My name is Sierra Vaughn, and I'm 21 years old. If you've been following this story, you already know that what I found in that attic wasn't just a memory, it was a warning. My aunt's diary revealed a cycle of death and betrayal hidden in the bones of our bloodline, and when I heard my mother speaking softly to someone who wasn't there, mentioning my name in a voice that sounded both mournful and ominous, I knew I had barely scratched the surface. That night, I began investigating the Vaughn family's history deeper than I ever dared. While the rest of the house slept, I took the diary and searched for more physical records. Letters, photographs, medical notes. What I found chilled me to the core. My grandmother had a twin sister who died mysteriously at age 16. Her name had been erased from all family albums. Her face had been scratched out in pictures. I only found a blurry image of her inside an old Bible tucked behind torn wallpaper in the study. Her name was Josephine, and from what little I gathered, she was gifted, not in the sweet fairy tale way. No, Josephine could see things before they happened. She predicted deaths, illnesses, even the fire that eventually killed her. But no one listened. They called her cursed. My great-grandfather had her locked in the cellar when she began acting strangely, talking to the walls, drawing bloody symbols on her bedroom floor. When the fire happened, everyone thought it was an accident. But Aunt Marie's diary said otherwise. She believed Josephine had set the fire herself. Or worse, her father did to silence her forever. From then on, every girl born into the Vaughn family had suffered some dark fate. My own cousin fell down a well and broke her spine. My sister vanished in the woods at 14, her body never found. And me? I had survived until now. I started hearing the scratching behind my bedroom walls. It wasn't mice, it wasn't plumbing, it was words, my name. Over and over, I recorded it one night and played it back. It wasn't just my name, it was Josephine's. Voice whispering, "He's coming, the blood must be paid." I confronted my mother. She denied everything at first. But when I showed her the recordings and the diary, her face drained of color. "You weren't supposed to find out," she whispered. "We were trying to protect you from what?" That's when she told me every generation one girl in the Vaughn line must be offered as a keeper to Josephine. She didn't die in the fire, her body did, but her soul remained tied to the land and... To us, the family had made a pact out of fear or guilt. I still don't know, to keep her spirit at bay by sacrificing one daughter to her every 20 years, not death exactly. A spiritual offering. The chosen girl would slowly be possessed by Josephine, her body taken over bit by bit until nothing of her was left. Aunt Marie had been chosen once. She fled, but Josephine tormented her for decades. My sister had been chosen next, but something went wrong. She ran into the woods to escape the pull and was never seen again. And now it was me. Why didn't you warn me? I screamed at my mother. "You were too strong," she said, tears rolling down her cheeks. "We thought maybe the curse would skip you, but it hadn't. The dreams had." Returned more vivid than ever, Josephine in a mirror mouthing words I didn't understand. The diary now flipped open on its own, always to a specific page where a ritual was described, one that could sever the bond permanently, but only through blood. Fire and betrayal. I decided to do it. I wouldn't be anyone's vessel. I began collecting the items needed. The soil from the unmarked grave, outside the pendant buried with Josephine, a strand of my mother's hair, and something of my own that had been with me since birth. The ritual required 3 participants. I convinced my best friend, Cassie, and her brother to help me, telling them it was a way to stop the nightmares and break a generational curse. We planned to perform it in the same attic where it all began, under a blood moon that would rise in just 3 days. But Josephine wasn't going to wait. The night before the ritual, my friend Cassie was attacked in her sleep. Her arms were clawed with marking sigils that didn't exist in any language we knew. Her mouth was sewn shut in her dream. She woke up choking on blood that wasn't hers. Her brother backed out immediately. We were down to 2. That night, as I sat by the attic window watching the moon rise, I felt her behind me, cold fingers on my shoulders, breath that smelled like smoke and ash. I turned to see Josephine, not in a mirror, not in a dream, but right there, half-burned, black-eyed and smiling. She said, "You were always mine," but I didn't scream. I told her I knew what she wanted. I offered her something better. "Take the one who started it all," I whispered. "Take my great-grandfather." Her smile faltered. She hissed, "He's dead." I reached into my coat pocket and held up a small black vial, ashes, his ashes kept by my mother all these years. Josephine howled. The attic shook. Pictures flew off the walls. She vanished, but not before whispering, 3 bloodlines, 1 fire, will meet again. When I awoke the next morning, the attic was spotless. The diary was gone. Cassie had no memory of anything. My mother was in a coma, and I had a burn mark on my palm in the shape of a crescent moon. Was it over? No, it had only just begun, but I was ready now. I would find Josephine's real grave, learn the truth of the pact, and finish what my ancestors were too afraid to face, because I was not their victim. I was their reckoning. For weeks I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the faint whispers of that thing in the walls, whispering my name like it knew my soul. My name is Serena Valor, and this is my true story. I'm 26 now, but back then I was just a girl trying to survive a cursed bloodline, trapped in a family where revenge and ancient horror went hand in hand. After the events in the attic and discovering my grandmother's journal, I knew I was dealing with more than just ghosts. I was unraveling a deliberate plan, one that had been set in motion generations before me. The blood-soaked legacy of the Valor women wasn't just legend. It was prophecy. One night, while going through some old city archives I found in the attic, I came across a photograph that made my breath catch. It was dated 1896. The woman in the photo was the spitting image of me. Her name was Lysandra Valor, and she'd been hanged for murdering her husband and 2 sons. The file said her last words, "Where my blood will live," she finished it. I slammed the file shut, my hands trembling. I wasn't just haunted, I was chosen. The more I tried to distance myself from the house, the more it pulled me in. It was like the creaking floors, the cold Air and the shadows all recognized me. One night I woke to find symbols carved into my bedroom walls matching those in my grandmother's journal. My fingers bled just touching them. I realized that the house was preparing me for something. My mother, usually distant and cold, started speaking in riddles. She'd stand at the edge of my room whispering, "You're the final gate. You're the curse unbroken." When I confronted her, she laughed like a madwoman and vanished for 3 days. When she returned, her eyes were hollow. I locked myself in and kept the journal with me at all times. One entry stood out. "When the third moon bleeds, she will face her blood. If she fails, the house consumes her. If she succeeds, she becomes it." What? Did it mean to become the house? I felt like I was losing my mind. I reached out to a local priest, Father Marrow, who had once been a specialist in spiritual cleansings. When he stepped into the house, he vomited, "There's something ancient here, something older than any demon I've ever faced," he whispered. He told me my family's bloodline wasn't cursed by accident. It had been offered. Generations ago, one of my ancestors had made a pact with a shadow entity called Thorn Offering, the velour line, in exchange for power, control, and revenge. Each firstborn daughter was a vessel. Each one had to pass the test. If she failed, the entity took her. If she succeeded, she would carry on the pact. That's why every velour woman had gone insane, disappeared, or died violently. I was next. The third moon referred to a rare blood moon that was only days away. That night, I sat in the basement, the heart of the curse. Candles lit the room as I chanted the words from the journal. Suddenly, a shriek filled the house. It wasn't human. I looked up and saw faces melting through the walls. My grandmother, her mother, and Lysandra, all reaching for me, all screaming. The floor cracked open and from it rose a tall, robed figure with glowing red eyes. "Thorn, will you take the pact or end the blood?" he hissed. I screamed, the sound ripping from my chest as the world shook. Memories that weren't mine flashed before my eyes. Murders, rituals, blood-soaked bathtubs, children crying in hidden chambers. I was connected to every one of them. Thorn offered me the same deal he had offered Lysandra. "Give me a soul, and I will set you free." I had a choice. Pass the curse to someone else or let it die with me. I thought of my sister, only 12. I thought of future daughters I knew. I couldn't let this cycle continue. I reached into the journal and pulled out a ritual meant to bind Thorn permanently, but I needed one thing, the blood of the pact maker. That meant my mother. I found her sitting in the attic, humming a tune from my childhood. She looked at me with dead eyes and whispered, "I've waited for this day." Without warning, she lunged at me with a knife. We fought, screaming and clawing. I finally overpowered her and drove the ritual blade into her heart. As she died, she whispered, "You were always the stronger one. I'm proud." The ground trembled as the ritual began. I chanted, pouring her blood into the circle drawn in salt, and Ashthorn screamed. As the house cracked, walls falling apart, mirrors shattering, a blinding light burst from the floor and sucked him into the void along with the faces of all the cursed velour women. Then silence. The air felt clean. I collapsed. When I woke, the house was still. The walls were normal. The whispers were gone. I had broken the curse, but at a cost. My mother was gone. My body was covered in scars from the ritual, but I was free. For the first time in my life, I felt peace. That night, I stood outside and watched the blood moon disappear into the sky. No shadows, no screams, just silence. The knock on the door came again, sharp and patient. I stood frozen, my breath hitched, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath with me. A low and battered but standing tall moved forward and peeked through the peephole. It was Iris. But something about her eyes was wrong. They weren't the warm hazel I remembered. They were dark, almost black, as if something else had taken root inside her. Alawan and I exchanged a glance. She opened the door slowly, cautiously. "Come in," she said. Iris stepped inside, drenched in the evening mist, and her eyes flickered back to their natural color. "We need to end this tonight," she said. "I found where they buried the rest of them, the ones they took before me." We followed her down into the woods behind the old Glenbrook church. Deep within the forest, a shallow graveyard marked by unholy symbols emerged from the fog. There were 7 graves each, with names of missing girls, including Iris, but there was one freshly dug mound. Eloan's voice broke the silence. "That one's for me." My stomach twisted. The cold, it seemed, had made their choice, but not the way they planned. We were going to flip the ending as Iris began chanting words she found in the ancient book, words in Latin older than any priest dared whisper. The trees began to groan. Shadows crept along the ground like spilled ink, but we were ready. I carried the relic we stole from Father Gray's study. A silver dagger dipped in consecrated ash. It hummed in my hand as we stood above the open grave. And then they came, hooded, silent, circling us, but this time we weren't prey. Iris threw the first spark, literally. Her palm burst into a controlled flame, scattering the first wave of attackers. Alawan began her counter-chant, calling on the souls buried here, victims lost and forgotten. The wind howled, the sky cracked, one by one the hooded figures fell to their knees, shrieking faces melting into grotesque forms. I lunged forward and drove the dagger into the final figure, the woman who led them all. Grandmother Lovina, her scream was not human. It was a chorus of every soul she had consumed. The forest exploded with light, then plunged into silence. It was over. The spell had broken. The cold had been buried by the very spirits they had tormented. Days later, as dawn spilled gold across the hills of Glenbrook, Alawan and I stood by the graves. We planted wildflowers on each one. Iris disappeared after that night. Some say she moved to Europe. Others claim she became something else entirely. I don't know. What I do know is that Glenbrook hasn't had a missing girl since the church stands abandoned, ivy swallowing its sins. Alawan and I still carry scars. Emotional, spiritual, literal, but we carry them together, and sometimes in the silence of night, I swear I hear a voice whisper, "You changed the ending." Yes, we did, for all the girls before us, for ourselves. This is my story. This is how we ended a centuries-old horror with nothing but belief, bravery, and blood. Thanks for watching this video. If you've made it this far, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Let's make sure more people hear the voices that were once buried. This story is written and edited by Dark Life Side Diaries.